All right. Good evening, everybody. Tonight we are talking with Brian from Cryptid Paranormal. He has had a deep, lifelong fascination with cryptids and the paranormal, which was sparked by an early childhood experience. Brian's personal journey into the unexplained began with a compelling encounter at the age of 16 when he and his friend believed they sighted a Bigfoot on his parents' property in Pennsylvania. So stay tuned to hear about Brian's efforts to unravel the darkness. Good evening,
Good evening,
Aaron.
Jeff. How's it going?
How's it going, man?
Good. Second week back, I would rather be in Gettysburg still.
Yes, I always call it the vacation hangover. It's you get back and you just not ready to go back to work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did for a week and a half now, and yeah,
Yep.
I'm still not over it.
Yep. Still not. No, I'm ready to go back out, especially read more and more. And we could have gone to this place. We should have checked out this place. I mean,
There
just
was
it's
a lot we didn't see.
yeah. And I mean, we were there, just about a week and still didn't touch everything that Gettysburg has to offer. So
Yeah.
such a
Well, a
cool
day in
place.
Baltimore, a day in DC. I mean, we
Yeah.
kind of ate up some stuff too. So
Yep. Yeah, we did break it up, but yeah, it's just amazing how much there is out there.
yeah, I feel like we could pick just anywhere, along the coast. I think Richmond and like Williamsburg, Virginia might be some of the next ones.
That would be a good one. Yeah. When I lived in North Carolina, along the coast there was all sorts of old Civil War, battlements and encampments and, stuff like that. And rumors of old tunnels, under cities that were used to smuggle arms, from building to building. And, always heard
Hey,
the legends of, like people finding crates of muskets and stuff, still in, of course, pristine condition, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
As long as it's not a federal park that's closed at a certain time, I'm good.
Hey, you just get a warning.
So
Aaron's on a list now.
I hate lists.
All right. Well, tonight, we have a cryptid researcher, a paranormal researcher, UFOologist. He wears a lot of hats, and I'm looking forward to, hearing about his experiences.
Yeah, should be pretty good. We always have great guests, so let's just jump into it.
All right.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Tonight?
Well, thank you.
I think you might be seeing me do this. I have something flying around. Came out of nowhere. Lots of stuff that you cover, not only the paranormal, but cryptids as well.
Yes. I am a kind of a one-man show. I do it all.
What got you? Let's start with paranormal. What got you interested in the paranormal?
I think what actually initially sparked my interest was probably unsolved mysteries sometime in the 80s. And then just after Unsolved Mysteries came on, just kind of anything supernatural, anything paranormal, anything cryptid related that came on TV, I was interested. And I just couldn't get enough of it. Couldn't stop. Started checking out books from the school library, that kind of thing. And
I think Unsolved Mysteries was like a gateway drug for a lot of us from that time. It exposed you to so much. For me, it was Unsolved Mysteries. And then I've said it before, but the Reader's Digest book, Strange Stories and Amazing Facts. Man, I carried that thing around like a Bible when I was a kid. Just, it was about that thick. And I was just, Where's Jason? Oh, he's upstairs reading, you know, and it's just going through, just absorbing all that. And Aaron and Gina actually got me a copy of that book a few months ago because I had misplaced mine. So that was really cool. So I've got it again, so I can finally, you know, read all the old classics that got me into it.
Fair enough.
Yep. So then you got out and started investigating, and what was your first place, if you can remember, that you investigated?
I want to say a buddy's house. Growing up, I want to say we were 9 or 10 maybe, and you know there was a rumor in his family that their house was haunted in the basement. You know, his sisters used to tell us stories that they saw. I don't know if it was true or not, but you know, I was fascinated. I couldn't wait to get down to that basement and hope to see something. Of course, we did, but you know, and then after that, it was really just a lot of you know, continued unsolved mysteries, a lot of sightings. Remember the TV show Beyond Reality, or the archaeologist?
Yeah.
And then when I was 16, my best friend and I were playing paintball out in Pennsylvania, and we were playing at night. Just the two of us. We've been playing all weekend, but this was the second night. It was Saturday night, like somewhere between 10 and midnight, and we were out taking just the two of us. They were on, my parents had at that time 12 acres up there, and it was just like an old camper or whatever there that we used to stay in, trailer, and I thought I had doubled back. He thought he had doubled back, and they have a pond, and I came around the pond, and I was like, oh, I had him dead to rights. I was so excited. We've been shooting at each other in the afternoon. He had got me that particular day. Good. Almost point blank. He was just, I don't know what I was doing. I didn't see him. He nailed me right in the chest. There was a huge ball, the size of a paintball sticking out of me the rest of the day. And so I thought I had the drop on him. I was really excited. I took my time, slowly crawled around, didn't make a noise, started shooting. I was like, I swear I hit it. You know, I was like, what's going on? And he wasn't moving around. And I was like, well, I'll just get a little closer. Took a few more shots. And to be fair, it's dark. So there's a good chance that some of them missed. But I knew I had to at least hit him once or twice. So I started moving closer, and then he started standing up. And for a point of reference, I am 6'8" tall. I was this tall at that time, about 16. I was already 6'8".
Jeez.
And, you know, I'm 15 or 20 feet away, and this thing is standing up, and I still didn't realize it wasn't him. And then all of a sudden, you know, he's probably about 6'4". We're still friends today, but yeah, I would say he's about 6'4". So it's standing up, and then I realized, wait a minute, it's taller. It's almost taller than I am now, and I'm standing there watching this thing go, and it kept going. And I was just, it's an unusual experience to meet someone taller than I am. You know, you go months, sometimes years between running into somebody who's taller. You know what I mean?
Right.
So seeing something stand up 2 or 3 taller than me, so I took off running. And I was on a side trail. My friend was on what we used to call the main trail. As it turned out, he was on the other side of the woods shooting at the same thing, thinking it was me. And he saw it stand up too. And quickly realized when it got taller than him that it wasn't me either, because it kept going. And I got to the intersection of the trail, and I kind of stopped and turned around, and he almost plowed me over. We looked at each other real quick. It was very clear that we both saw the same thing. And I turned to my right, and he turned to his left, and there was something standing back there looking at us. Neither one of us was going to stick around to find out. You've never seen 2 fat guys run so fast in your life. I'm telling you.
A week and a half ago. Sorry.
Right.
But yeah, we took off running. I mean, there was no way. And no, he had taken shots at it. I took shots at it. It didn't seem like it phased it at all. And we got back into the trailer. We looked out the back window and didn't see anything. So we're kind of sitting in the living room watching Conan O'Brien, just hanging out. talking about it for, I don't know, the next probably 6 hours or so, 8 hours. We were up all night. Because, we ultimately boiled down the two possibilities. Either because it wasn't a bear. We don't have very really black bears in Ohio or that part of Western Pennsylvania. And because it's right over the Ohio line into Pennsylvania, you could throw a rock at Ohio. So it's not that far in. As well, black bear is only going to be about 6 feet tall anyways. And we're both taller than that. Not to mention that whatever this thing was walked towards us. And it was clearly walking. It was fast, but it was walking. And a bear might take a few steps, but ultimately it's going to fall on all fours. And the other thing, too, is if we're both shooting paintballs at a bear, it would have picked one of us, whoever pissed it off first, and it would have ate us, and then probably got the other one running away. So it's like, and, we came up with two possibilities, either a 10-foot guy in a gorilla suit, or we just saw a Sasquatch. And initially, we were really trying to go with the 10-foot guy in the gorilla suit, but it just doesn't make sense. I mean, what are the odds someone that tall, dressed as a gorilla, is out on private property in the middle of nowhere? When we happen to be out there shooting paintballs at each other at the middle of the night.
Right.
And, it wasn't, we didn't live up there. It was just like a camp, kind of a camp place that my parents had that we would go to. So sometimes we would be gone for weeks, months in between visits. So it's not like anyone would know we were there or weren't there. You know what I mean? And the fact that it walked so fast, it wasn't running. It was clearly walking. Now, it could have run after we turned around. I have no idea because neither one of us was taking a look back. Like I said, you've never seen us move so fast. And once we were in, we were in. It took a minute to look at the blinds because we were afraid it was going to reach through and pull one of us out.
Right.
Which, to be fair, it probably could have if it wanted to. And, so like you said, those were the two possibilities. Was the 10-foot guy in the gorilla suit or was it Sasquatch?
Did you go back out like the next day to see if you could see anything or okay? And what'd you find then?
Yeah. Nothing. We didn't look for things that I would have looked for now. I probably would have looked about 10 or 15 feet in the air for broken branches. We looked for tracks and stuff like that, but it was, fall. So it could be, depending on the year, it could either be snowing or it could be 85, That particular year we were wearing t-shirts, so it wasn't that cold yet. So the ground was still relatively hard because it's usually dry that time of year. It starts to get rainy towards the end, but and there's leaves because it was fall, so all the leaves had pretty much fallen.
Right. Leaf fall.
There are leaves everywhere, so we wouldn't have seen a track anyways. But now I would look for hair. I would have had a magnifying glass, had binoculars looking on the ground. I'd be doing all sorts of stuff. I would have put string around the area, quarantined it, and it was, but we were 16. We had no idea what we were doing. We just walked out there. We could have walked through a print and had no idea.
Right. We
were mainly just curious to see if it was, when we looked out the back window, I mean, it had to be noon, 1 o'clock. We wanted to make sure it was nice and bright before we went back out.
Yeah. Not going back out there if it's even like a cloudy today.
Well, like you said, the reaction is interesting considering the size of you and your friend. And then you're lighting the thing up with paintballs, right? Like, it seemed to be pretty chill about it, like didn't even really bother it at all.
No, and these were cheap Walmart paintball guns. You know what I mean? They were like $30, so it was not like we were hitting it with high powered, but it still hurts. You still feel it. But going back to what ruled us on a Sasquatch is like, well, if it's a giant ape, which essentially at the time that's what we convinced the Sasquatch would be. It would be a giant gorilla. They have thick hair. And since then, I've studied gorillas, primates, all sorts of stuff, and their hair is very thick. Sometimes they have a denser skin. So a paintball from a weak paintball gun, 20, 25 feet away, maybe.
Might not do much.
It probably felt it, but not probably much more than a mosquito bite. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I assume it knew we were there, even though we didn't know it was there, but maybe not. I don't know. I still try to think back on it often, but there's so much that's there's certain moments that are clear. Like when it's standing up is burned into my mind. Me running down that trail and almost PJ and I almost colliding, it's burned into my mind. But I didn't pay a close attention to its face or it was clear it had shoulders because I thought it was a him. I thought it was a person. You could see it was 2 legs, 2 arms, a torso. And, there's probably a lot of details, or if I had the encounter now, I'd probably just be staring at it and hoping it doesn't kill me. But because I'd want to remember, note as many details as possible before I took off running in the other direction. But back then you're 16, you just kind of like, what the hell? And then you just take off and
just in awe over something so big.
Yeah. And the next day we looked around everywhere for it, just not trying to necessarily get close to it, just to kind of see if we could see it in the distance. Like maybe it was something else, but there was no signs of anything. And still there's nothing that would be that tall. That was the thing with us both being so tall. It was easy to judge because we both agreed it was taller than I was. I think.
Yeah, that's really pushing it for a black bear.
Yeah, I mean, even if it was 7 foot, that's only a couple inches. But this thing had me easily by 2 or 3 feet. I think closer to 3. My friend PJ thinks kind of closer to 9, but somewhere between 9 and 10 feet, we agree. So I've never heard of a black bear getting that big. I'm not saying it's not possible. Then how's it going to walk on 2 legs that long?
Right.
For that long, right?
Because it was more than a few steps to where it was looking at us. I mean, I don't know how many steps it was for it, but we had run for a good 30, 40 seconds at that point at least, and we stopped and turned around, and it had progressed forward towards us, and a bear would have been on all fours. A bear also would have gotten shot with a paintball gun. We probably would have made it mad. Like I said, I think it either would have left the area or it would have went after one of us.
Yep.
Right.
Either way, it would have won. I mean, there's, what I'm saying? One of us wouldn't be here to tell the story,
Right.
And, it's neither one of us talked about it for a long time. And we're kind of like, the first time we talked about it, I was like, I would never say anything unless you were there. We're like, do you remember when we did this? This was years and years ago. And we both said, yeah. He's like, have you ever told anybody? I said, no, because I would never tell anybody. Because we had fell out of touch for a couple of about, I don't know, 10 or 12, 15 years, whatever it was. And we've reconnected several years ago. But the first thing he said was, do you ever tell anybody about that? I was like, no, because I'm still not 100% sure what exactly we saw. And he said the same thing. If you weren't there to see it, I never would have told a soul. And we talked about it, and we came to the same conclusion. We still agree. It had to be a Bigfoot. There's not any other explanation that either one of us has been able to find to explain what else it could have been other than a Bigfoot.
Right.
Did you continue to spend time out in that area after this?
Oh, yeah.
And just never saw anything like that again, huh?
No. And, at the property my parents had out there at the time, they had 2 ponds on it. It was there directly behind them. I think they were 10 acres. My parents were 12. And then there was a little 5-acre space on the corner. But then there was a property that bordered all 3 of them that was like, I don't know, 500 acres, a big farm. Across the street from them was another farm that was good 500-600 acres. And there were several massive farms in the area. And it's still rural today. I've driven through there before. Even today, I still kind of go to that area and look around every now and again, hoping to see the old boy. But, there are massive farms. There's the river. There's the Ohio River. It goes right through there. So you can walk to it from where they were. And Lake Erie really is only by car, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So it could, especially at that time, the side of Ohio in Ashtabula County was very rural as well. That's since changed quite a bit. But at that time in the mid-90s, you could easily go through the woods to the lake and be unnoticed. You know what I mean? At the time we didn't realize that, but after years of research, it seems like it has all the right parameters. It's secluded. There was only one actual house that was close to ours on that side of the street, and the other two houses were acres away, probably miles in case of the one house. And we never saw anybody on the property ever, the times that we were there, but we weren't there. It was just a weekend place. So anything migrating or living or moving through there regularly would not necessarily know it was even occupied. It was probably just random chance that it was coming through at the particular time. It probably didn't think anyone lived there because we were so scarce and unpredictable. We probably just never passed by at the same time. But with the bodies of water, there's all sorts of berries, different fruit trees. There's farms nearby. There's plenty of wildlife, and it's all private property up there. And it's most of the lots are massive. And like I said, you have the river right there as well. So you have sources of food. You've got plenty of shelter. You've got plant life, berries. You've got small animals or big animals for that matter, certainly plenty of deer. So it is kind of the perfect place for it to pass through or stay in. I do kind of think they migrate personally.
Mm-hmm.
I just think I think they don't exhaust one food source. I think they have some kind of I don't know want to say a pattern, but I think they have a habit, I guess.
Right. Nomadic, yeah.
I think they just pass through, and I think it was probably just passing through, and it was just a surprise that we were there as we were as it, and that's probably why we never saw one before or since.
So a lot of people talk about when they come, especially, like Close Encounters with Sasquatch, that there's a, like a musky smell, mildewy type. Do you remember anything like that with it?
I don't have a particularly good sense of smell. I never have. I can almost smell nothing. So I didn't smell anything. As far as I know from my friend PJ, he's never mentioned anything about an odor or anything like that. But if there was, I wouldn't have known to begin with. I can't.
Right.
Drives my wife crazy. I have to get my face like half an inch from the food to smell what it smells like. Get out of my food,
It smells great, honey. Thank you.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
So since you've been researching, have you run into anything even close to that?
Not to that, no. I have a lot of stories. At that time in the 90s, that part of Ohio and Pennsylvania where there were tons of sightings reported to the BFRO. There were some newspaper articles I've come across over the years and things like that. And just on social media over the last several years, throwing the occasional post out there, people have been replying and saying, oh, yeah, I knew somebody, or I had this experience, or my neighbor said this, or somebody saw that, or that kind of thing. So we weren't the only ones by far. So they definitely seemed like they were in that area. And there still are sightings still today. There was one in the last few years at Geneva State Park, which is about 45 minutes by car from there. And there's been a few more recent ones as late as the early 2020s. So I think they're still around. How their migration works, I don't know. I don't know how long they stay in one area. It is pretty thick up there. There's still a lot of farmland. There's plenty of places for them to hide, plenty of places to go. It's not very well lit because it is so rural. So it's still pretty easy for them to blend in. So I would imagine they're still up there. And like I said, people still see one every now and again. So there's enough of them around where they're still getting caught out in the open, if you will, from time to time.
Yeah, I see for Ashtabula County, the BFRO has eight sightings between 76 and 2014. So they're all Class A and B sightings. Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah, there's that's the next major city is Erie, right over into Pennsylvania. And if you look up at Erie, there's a decent amount of sightings out there as well.
That's all in the Appalachian area, isn't it? Appalachian Mountains.
Not quite. That's more the southern part of the state for Ohio. But there are a lot of sightings down there. We have Salt Fork State Park in Ohio, and it's one of the highest sightings in the country areas. And there's a big convention every May there for a whole week, Bigfoot convention.
Oh boy,
And people see I've been there. It's
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Saw Jason smile.
Yep.
I know what's going on our list.
Yep. Got to go out there now.
Well, here's the thing about Salt Fork is it's a massive state park. So if you drive by car, there's no stops or lights or anything in the park. But from one end to the other, going 60 miles an hour, it took me about 35 minutes.
Wow.
And it's all woods on each side of the road. There's some campgrounds and cabins and stuff like that, but it's very dense forest. And then you have Wayne National Forest, which is down there as well, which I believe is something like 250,000 acres. And then there's Hocking Hill State Park that's right not too far from Lohr. And that's massive as well. That also has a massive cave system, one of the largest in the area. So it is a nice, thick, heavily wooded area. There's plenty of lakes, ponds. You're not terribly far from the Ohio River. You're at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. There's plenty of spaces for them to hide and thrive, and no one would be the wiser. It's just so much undeveloped, not necessarily unexplored, but some of it may very well be unexplored. I don't know. It's a lot of those woods are pretty deep there, so it's very possible no one's been back there in a long time.
And like you said, the woods are deep and very dense. So even people that are, going off trail, and exploring, you're not going to see anything 50 yards from you, in a lot of these woods.
Mm-hmm.
No, I doubt it.
And we've all seen, the pictures of the cave systems. Why not use those,
Yeah. There's a lot of them you can't get into. They're not all entirely explored. You can't get into them because they've been deemed unsafe. But that doesn't mean there's not another way in that they're using that we're not aware of. I mean, they still find caves and entrances and things down in these places. So who's to say what's out there because it's all protected land. So it's not like you can go back there with equipment and look around for stuff. If it's maybe a couple of trees have fallen down from time to time, and it's, Well, there could be any number of reasons why you wouldn't see the entrance.
We cannot have explored every square foot of that, So that's how I feel about that.
Yep. And we all know, I figured this is where you were going, Aaron, with that the cave system versus the, missing persons comparison.
Well, goes along with that too, doesn't it? I mean, really.
It sure does.
But what says, like a Sasquatch or Bigfoot can't use that cave system to move around too?
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's interesting. Have you guys ever seen Missing 411?
Oh, I love Missing 411. Yeah. Yeah, the research Palladi's doing is amazing.
But he talks about the state national parks where the disappearances are high. And he doesn't say it's a Sasquatch, but he brings some interesting points. Sometimes when these guys disappear, it's blamed on an animal attack, right? But however, where they're hunting, they're in a park or they're on state land or government land hunting. They disappear, but so does their equipment, so does their gun, so does their well, why is everything disappearing if it's an animal? Yep. Only a human would take that. But then if they find the body, it looks like an animal attack. But then again, what happened to all the stuff? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and they're finding these shoes and boots, taken off and placed neatly at the base of a tree with, a hunting rifle leaning up against the tree, 10 yards from the body. A lot of stuff just doesn't make sense.
No, and a person more than likely would have kept the gun, sold the gun, destroyed the gun, and fired the gun, something. But they find it and it's still loaded and has, it's doesn't look like it's been fired recently. So what would take that and all of a sudden just leave it there? Because a person, you're not going to want to leave evidence, right? I mean, that's crazy. Who would do that? Are you with the DNA the way it is? Are you sure you can get everything off? So it is very strange. I'm not saying it's Sasquatch doing it. It's an interesting observation when you said the missing persons.
Yep.
Because if you look at the Sasquatch sightings too, it does seem to align with the cave systems and it aligns with the parks and things like that. So it's an interesting correlation.
Yeah, and Pallades has put a lot into his classification system. As far as like there's got to be granite fields nearby, there's got to be a body of water nearby, certain criteria that has to be met that just kind of meets, it intersects with Bigfoot sightings a lot, as far as the terrain and the features around it.
Feral hill people.
Yep, that too.
I mean,
well,
yeah.
I mean, hey, two things can be true. It doesn't necessarily mean they're connected, but it certainly is an odd coincidence. But if, like you were
Absolutely.
saying, the cave systems exist and there's two different entities, if you will, or a human and something non-human using it, maybe. Because, Sasquatches are pretty good at avoiding us on the ground. Who's to say what they can do in a cave system that's dark and you're using flashlights? They might be able to very easily go unnoticed, depending on the size of it. And, and these tunnels could potentially go anywhere.
Yep.
It's a lot of interesting stuff out there.
Definitely. So there's that side, the cryptid side, and then before the show, we were talking. You said even UFO stuff. You do UFO and alien stuff. Let's cover just a little bit of that. What turned you on to that stuff?
You got to blame it all on unsolved mysteries.
It all goes back to unsolved. Man, I
unsolved
remember
mysteries, and then sightings from there.
Yeah, such a cool show. Unsolved
Yep.
Mysteries was.
But it's always fascinated me that life on another planet could make it all the way here. What do they want? What do they like? What do they know that we don't know? If they're smart enough to make it here from some other part of the galaxy, they probably have a lot of answers to questions we haven't even thought of yet.
Yep.
That's just always fascinated me. And the conspiracy part of it and the government cover up. And it clearly seems like they're concealing something from us. So whether it's really UFOs or not, it's hard to say, or really aliens, I should say. I don't doubt they're covering up UFOs or UAPs. The question is, where do they actually come from?
Yep.
Right.
Whether they're experimental technology, whether they're an alien race, or, one thing I've always considered, and I always tell people, most of the planet's water. We've only explored barely 5% of the ocean. We have no idea what's down there. There literally could be an entire civilization somewhere. We have no idea.
I agree.
You get down to a certain depth, we can't survive. And all of a sudden, if you remember when, I can't remember what that great, that giant octopus is called, that used to be a cryptid until it wasn't, But that's the point. There's always discovering some kind of new entity or new fish or new this or new that down there. And I always kind of wonder, like, we developed on land with hundreds of thousands of different species across the animal kingdom, the insect world. Who's to say what's developed under there?
Right.
Why is it, if I was a betting man and I said sentient life is going to evolve, I would say, well, was there more land or more water? If you say there's more water, I'd say that's probably more likely where life is going to evolve.
Yep.
So I've always wondered that too. When you would start talking about the aliens and you get in the Black Pyramid in Alaska, and then now there's possibilities of a pyramid in Antarctica that they say is a natural formation, but then when you look at it, it doesn't really seem like it. I mean, I feel like in school they always told us that a perfect triangle doesn't appear naturally in nature.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and then Antarctica is protected by the treaty, right? So no one can go explore unless you have these, 7 nations, sign off on your permit to go out there. I think that expires in like 2050 or 2055, I think. That expires, or is due to be looked at again. So people are starting to bring that up more. But it's supposedly for ecological protection, that no one's allowed out there in Antarctica.
They say ecological, and I'm like, what ecological? According to you, it's a whole thing. It's a giant sheet of ice.
It's desolate. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Everything Admiral Byrd saw, he lied about, of course, according to the government. So, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't know. It's just interesting to me that all these countries are so adamant that no one ever goes and looks.
Yep. If anybody wants a rabbit hole to go down, definitely go down the Admiral Byrd story, because that's a good one. Full military expedition out to Antarctica. They take airplanes out and all the equipment malfunctions. They end up flying into this, large cavern that, aircraft could fly into side by side, because They weren't flying by themselves. Yeah, it's I've always loved the Admiral Byrd story.
It's interesting because, newspapers and supposedly his journal's been debunked and all this other stuff. And I was like, but with drone technology, satellites, how come we still don't know anything about Antarctica? Why are there no more pictures? Why can't you turn it on live somewhere?
Yep. And why
Like,
is Google Maps and the other
Yeah.
ones, pixelating certain parts of, Antarctica, and there's been, photos that people have done now from Google Maps that have proved it's been photoshopped. That they're just overlaying other pieces, the tundra or whatever over these certain coordinates.
It's it raises a lot of questions. Is it an alien base? I don't know. Is there some other intelligence on this planet besides us? Maybe. It's such a fascinating thing. And then you can take that to Roswell. You can take that to the Mothman at Point Pleasant in West Virginia. Or the Flatwoods Monster. I mean, Flatwoods Monster is technically considered a cryptid, but really the description from the family is they saw a ship crash and that thing came out of it. It looked a lot like a reptilian from the description that the family gave. But, if you ever, that's another rabbit hole. If you want to go down the Flatwoods Monster, and there's a museum in Sutton, West Virginia, you can go to. It's an interesting place.
Huh.
But
That's
that
one
was
I
a big
haven't heard
one.
of.
People saw that. Yeah. There's a Bigfoot museum down the street from the Flatwoods Monster Museum in Sutton, West Virginia.
Yeah, I was
action
mapping
down
those
there.
out when we did our Gettysburg trip to see if it was feasible to go out there or not, and it wasn't, unfortunately. But
Yeah. But the Flatwoods Monster is a perfect example. That was a down ship. A bunch of soldiers showed up. For a few weeks, there were some sightings of this thing here and there. It disappeared. A few days later, all the soldiers are gone. And then, of course, there was the same thing with the Mothman. There were, right after the incident when the Silver Bridge collapsed, people got paid a visit from guys in black suits who basically looked not quite identical, but pretty close. Same haircut, same shoe, everything was the same. In a black unmarked car with government plates, If you go to the Mothman Museum in Point Pleasant, they even sell Men in Black trading cards down there.
oh, nice.
From the different times they've been to West Virginia, because they've been there, you know what I mean? But they show up everywhere. There's always, anytime there's any kind of an alien alleged mass sighting, like the Phoenix Lights. Next thing you know, people say, "Oh, there's these guys in black suits talking to me." It's everywhere you go, and these are people that are not necessarily like us that follow this stuff and are saying, "Oh, I expect to see the Men in Black, like Mr. Smithers. They're just waiting."
Yep.
These are just regular people who probably didn't believe in UFOs until they did. And the stories are the same. So it begs the question: why is everyone seeing the same thing? Why is the military always showing up if there's nothing to worry about? How many weather balloons could possibly fall? How bad could our technology be if we're a superpower?
Yep.
They got to pick a story somewhere.
This is the quickest I found. That's pretty interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
The hands are claws, reptilian-like claws. I mean, the description is reptilian.
Yeah, totally. I can see where it would be. Pretty cool.
It's a fascinating story, and again, this like the military showed up just like Roswell. No, it wasn't a ship; it was a satellite. But why quarantine off the area? What they never said why. That's what always gets me. Why? What's the big secret if it's just a satellite? Why can't people see a satellite? What is it? No one. Who's going to know? I could look at a satellite and not tell you anything about it other than it looks like a satellite dish. It doesn't say DirecTV, it says U.S. government. But it's not like I'm going to memorize the spec details and go sell it to another country.
Right.
I wouldn't even know what I'm looking at. So why do you need soldiers armed with weapons to keep people from looking at it? And that was
you have
before
Richard
today with cell phones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even you had in the early 80s, the Richard Doty thing with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, I think it was called back then, where they were doing active disinformation or misinformation campaigns against UFO researchers, to the extent that one of them ended up going crazy, spent a lot of his later life in a mental institution because of the stuff they were doing to this guy. And it even went to the level of, so he was intercepting unencrypted transmissions, he found out. So he started studying them. And it turns out that it was transmissions from secret military aircraft at the time that were being tested. So to cover that up, the Air Force actually had Richard Doty befriend this guy and start hyping him up that it was UFOs. The NSA came in, replaced his computer with one that was modified to help him decrypt these signals, because he had written a program to try to understand, the transmissions. So, I mean, they went deep, and then they befriended people in the UFO community, and started blackmailing people for information, and then, pushing cover-ups that way. I highly recommend looking up Richard Doty and going down that rabbit hole, because it's really, really screwed up.
It's frightening. We're told everyone laughs when you say, I think I saw a UFO, except for the military, the NSA, the CIA, and whoever else is behind the veil, so to speak.
Yep.
When they send spies into your house to change out your computer and befriend you, but it's not real.
There's not real.
There's nothing out there. Yeah,
nothing out there.
But it's all fascinating, and some people tie that into Bigfoot. And
what's that? What's that saying though? They're the government, and they're here to help.
Yep. Yep. I'm a fan of you're only paranoid until someone's actually following you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So crazy.
But it's the UFO activity also aligns a lot of times with Sasquatch activity too. If you look at the sightings, there's a lot of times there. Now, again, could multiple things be true and unconnected? Absolutely. If they're UFOs, I'm assuming that they're biologically capable of existing in our atmosphere or breathing our atmosphere. Why would you come here? Or they have sufficient means to adapt to do it or do something.
Yep.
But if they're anything like us remotely, whether they look like us or not, they probably need large quantities of water. So just like everything else on Earth, they matriculate towards water, like all living things on this planet anyways do. So could they be connected? Sure, maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. I think Sasquatch is a completely separate biological entity on this planet. I think the UFOs, I don't know what they're doing here. If I were them, I would be watching us and I wouldn't talk to us either. I mean, look how we treat each other.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
We even in our own country, we're all on the same side and we're offing each other in record numbers. So if you're a species capable of traveling across the galaxy and you have all this technology and you say to yourself, what would happen if we gave it to them? Well, if they didn't destroy themselves first, they'd probably try and kill us.
Yep.
So perhaps they're simply studying us and as well as all the other creatures on the planet, because we're just assuming that we're the only thing that they could be interested in, but perhaps they have no interest in us at all. They're wondering what's coming next or what used to be here or who knows what they're after, but it may be simply curiosity, the same way that they seem to observe us and that they've abducted people. Perhaps they take other animals too, not just cattle,
Well, and there's a theory that Sasquatch could be an interdimensional being, right? That can phase shift, in and out of this reality, which, I could definitely see as, someone that has interstellar travel lockdown, may be interested in studying something that can move between dimensions.
That's true. And the other possibility is that the Sasquatch isn't generating the portal at all. And the reason there's a coincidence is that either the portals themselves are natural and we just don't understand how to access them, or they were built by a civilization far beyond us, and the Sasquatches have simply accidentally or otherwise discovered how to use them. And when we see UFOs coming in and out, perhaps they're using the same portals. And it just happens to be a coincidence that they're overlapping.
Yep.
And perhaps the Sasquatches are from here, perhaps they're from somewhere else, and this is just a rest area, so to speak, passing through.
which leads back into the missing 411 because portals, play quite a bit into that theory as well.
Yeah.
You had the guy that went missing at Mesa Verde off an established trail. I think he was missing for 2 years. Search and rescue scoured the area. And Pallades did an investigation there with some physicists and found that in Mesa Verde, it's this cliff built, or this village built into the side of a cliff, and they had these large pits in the center of these villages. They're not sure if they're ceremonial or what, but they did some research, and their equipment detected a time shift between equipment that's right outside of the pit and then equipment that was inside of the pit. That time actually passed a little faster inside of the pit, which could they pose that it could be evidence of a past like portal or wormhole, something like that was either worshipped or generated by the people that lived at Mesa Verde. But 2 years later, this guy's body is found in a place that was already heavily searched by search and rescue. And that's one of the ones that people are starting to, kind of point towards, portal activity. Did this guy go through one, get lost, go somewhere, and end up getting dumped back out somewhere nearby, and maybe Sasquatch is using those same things.
Well, that's the interesting thing with the 411 too, is the people always turn back, and the ones that turn back up, it's like they were there 1 second and gone the next.
Yep.
That's another common denominator, is they turn up somewhere else that's already been searched, 10, 15 times, and it's in an obvious spot. It'll be like the middle of a field blatantly. The grass is short, sticks out like a sore thumb. It's been searched 10 times, but 2 weeks after the search party stops, it appears in the middle of the field like it's been there the whole time.
Yep.
It just doesn't make sense. So there's something going on. And if it is some kind of a portal system and the Squatches have figured out how to use it, if you look at a lot of the Native American lore and their, essentially their paranormal history, they describe these things as spiritual guardians or,
yep.
Sometimes they could refer to them as wild men or another tribe of human, but they're not like us. They're different. And if you look at the First Nations people in Canada, they have stories about how they used to live side by side.
Tons of them up there.
Then,
yep.
Yeah. And then they decided when the Europeans came that since they were conforming the environment to suit their needs, and the Bigfoots essentially don't believe in that, they went to wherever it is they came back to wherever they came from, and they left us alone here. And supposedly, from time to time they still check, but that's what you're seeing now. But at one point we all lived in harmony, and there's stories about rock faces and cliffs or certain parts of the woods where they disappeared. And then if you really look into it, a lot of times strange stuff happens. There's also UFO sightings. There's other cryptid sightings. People disappear. People get weird energy spikes, things like that. So is there something supernatural? I think the supernatural is just a science that we don't yet understand. We probably don't even know the right questions to ask.
Yep.
Right.
But I think with the with the technology we have now, I think we're getting to the point where we can at least scratch the surface. Especially with drones, you can feel if there's something weird, you can fly a drone right in, see what happens to it. If it disappears into thin air, then you probably need to call somebody. But
Yep.
We're at the point now where we should hopefully be getting some answers here with the technology we have. Like the cameras, the things we can enhance, the different spectrals a camera can take. Because really, if you look at human vision, our vision's really terrible.
Yeah, it's very limited.
And now the thermal and all the IR stuff, the cameras that are available to regular people now,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And, ghosts, Bigfoot, anything like that, it's very possible that they're a color or some kind of a spectrum that we're not capable of seeing. Doesn't mean they're not there. Just means we have trouble seeing them because our vision is really not that detailed. Certain owls can change to match the color of a tree. Perhaps Bigfoot has a similar ability that they can alter their color, so to speak, to blend in, or perhaps they can reflect light or reflect light in a way, or refract, or however that works, or they bend light around them, or they just simply turn a color that we're not able to perceive very easily. So it allows them to simply blend into the background.
Well, with
It
all the
looks like they disappear, but it's not really a portal. It's just I don't know.
with all the species, a yeti in the snow, or the
Rougarou.
rougarou, yeah, like in Louisiana in those
Yep.
woods, and I mean they've all. If we do figure that that's what they are, then they've already adapted, right?
Sure.
So,
Well, and that's the thing is most primates are in typically warmer environments, but that's not necessarily true, because at the foothills of the Himalayas and the lower mountains, there's gorillas that have adapted
mhm,
over however many thousands of years, and they thrive there now, but they're not supposed to be. They're not supposed to be there. They shouldn't be
Right.
alive, but somehow they adapted. So these things are adaptable. And that's the thing. When you look at this kind of thing, it's not like it's just North America. You can trace wild man Sasquatch legends all the way back to Babylon, Samaria.
Yep.
The Greeks have their own spin-off. So all these people have all these different legends, all these different cultures. How would that be? How could they communicate at such a level at that time?
Yep.
That leaves two possibilities. Either they're all seeing the same thing because it's all over the place, or that goes back to the alien origins side of the coin, where you say something intervened in our evolution, and that's why everybody remembers these things, because they were all these different groups of people were somewhere at the same time at some point. Someone was showing them something,
mhm.
But then if you fast forward a couple thousand years and you go into North America, when the Europeans settled, Native Americans had cave drawings, like in Mount Shasta. You have totem poles, different artwork, and they drew things that they saw. They drew bear, they drew birds, eagles, and they drew Sasquatches.
Mhm.
So why would everything else be something that they saw but not a Sasquatch? My first question. My second question is this: if the Europeans, they saw these pictures and they said that looks like an ape or a gorilla, well, how would a Native American or a First Nations person know what a primate looked like if they haven't existed in North America in 10 million years? They
Right.
had to have some kind of reference, to see that, for a European to look at it and say that's a primate. So
Yep. And
they're
you can't
seeing
say it was the
something.
fossil record of, with them encountering fossils, right, through hunting and gathering, because look at the mistakes that we made, from the early 1900s to, around 1980, where, these dinosaurs were, I mean, just grossly wrong from what they actually look like. Because really they're, put back together with people's imaginations, right? Until, more data came out about them.
Yeah. But look at the oral history, too, of the native populations. They describe them as black and brown. How would they know how to describe what an ape looks like, or a gorilla looks like,
Exactly.
or a
Yep.
primate? They describe the features, they describe the color. They shouldn't know those details. That's not supposed to be possible from what we've been told. So there's two possibilities. Either we're missing something, something's wrong, they're right. There was something out there, there is something out there, and or it goes back to the ancient astronaut theory that there was some intervention from some other force that was not human. And that's how we all have that cultural memory of that, and that, people remember what those things were because perhaps they were more common. Or if some people refer to Sasquatch as the missing link, if you want to go down the evolutionary with Darwin.
Right.
It seems odd that we're one chromosome away from a chimpanzee. It's not like two chimpanzees popped out of human one day. Something had to be in between, right?
There's something in between.
There had to be some kind of a bridge species.
Yep.
So the theory is, of course, always that the bridge species died out and somehow there's no record. But so, well, wait a minute, how can we have fossil records of all these other animals and all these other species before and after? All the way up, there's Neanderthal man, Cro-Magnon man. I think there's like 21 different species of human at one point existed.
Right.
But the only one we're missing is the one
But this one that would have been more advanced, right? Have more evidence of it there with tools and everything else is just
that
missing.
potentially, that would have been intelligent and perhaps had its own burial records, or perhaps would have had, cavemen were painting on caves. So something close and, something between that close to a caveman. Because if you look at a caveman, they're still quite primate-like. But at some point, they started drawing on caves. So it would stand to reason that if there is a missing species, they might have some kind of burial,
Well, and there's a
ritual.
theory that, that we were alive at the same time Neanderthals were. And Neanderthals would have hunted us out with just the size difference. I mean, an average one would have been, probably about your size, 6'5" to 6'8", heavily muscular. And then you've got us who, are slimmer, shorter, and the theory is that there was something there to help us win that war that very well could have been, that missing link that then, evolved out.
Yeah. I mean, well, just like anything else, when the population gets isolated, the world's a big place.
Yep.
It's difficult to get around at that time. It's very easily that another species of human could have survived. And perhaps there's some inbreeding between the two species, and that's why there's so many similarities. But at some point, there was a bridge species from a chimpanzee to us. There had to be. You can't. There's unless everything we think we know is completely wrong, which that's always possible too. Something had to happen, and then you could dive into the theories of the ancient astronauts with the Anunnaki that they altered, our DNA, and perhaps a Sasquatch is what a human would actually look like right now. It's just that they infused their DNA with ours, or they sped up the evolution of certain DNA lines to make the form that we are today for their whatever the purposes they really would have had.
Yep. Which then leads into, the whole conspiracy of why is mainstream science silencing our history? There's a lot of stories of the Smithsonian coming in and, scooping up, these giants that were found in Ohio and, the Midwest. And then they're just, oh yeah, they were cataloged and now we can't find them. Or, they're lost in the archives. Or no, we never did that. We never took them at all. But there does seem to be an active effort to kind of conceal our history, especially in the United States and Canada, it seems like.
It does seem like there's something someone doesn't want us to know.
Yep.
And who or what that is remains to be seen. I question whether there could be truly a large, massive global conspiracy like that. But if there is, there would have to. I would assume there'd be one hell of a good reason for it. Because why all the secrecy? What is so bad that we can't possibly know?
Right.
But you can, if you ever watch the Y-Files on YouTube.
Love Y-Files. Yep.
You're hitting all of Jason's favorites tonight.
Every now and again, he calls the Smithsonian and he'll ask about the giants. It's really funny.
Yep.
And, there's a lady that they transfer him to, and she gets several of those calls a year, and she swears that there's nothing there. And they're like, well, that's weird because the newspapers covered it.
Yep.
He's got like 4 or 5 different newspaper. Were they all wrong? Just want to know what happened. Well, which one of them was right? What happened to whatever they found?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. One I've always been fascinated with is the Egyptian tunnels found in the Grand Canyon. And then the same thing, Smithsonian came in and then, researched it. And there's nothing there.
Yeah, the guy who scaled the side of it went in there, and then all of a sudden the Army came in the Air Force, and now there's a big barricade up there, and you can't go back there. It's too dangerous.
Yeah, and the Air Force or the airspace is closed. There was, I don't remember if it was Expedition Unknown, but one of those shows went out there to try to rappel down to where it supposedly was. And all of a sudden these helicopters showed up and started buzzing them. And it's strange for sure.
So crazy. Again, there's a government and they're here to help.
We're here to help. Yep.
Well, Brian, you have touched on a bunch of stuff that's definitely has us asking questions. And probably our watchers asking questions as well. We're going to have you on again. This was pretty good
Absolutely.
Tonight. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I would turn this into a 3-4-hour episode easy. So that's why Aaron's here to wrangle me when we start talking cryptids and UFOs. He's like, all right, Jason, we gotta.
Like I said, you hit all of Jason's favorites tonight. Missing 411 and the Y-Files. This is stuff I hear about when we're in the truck and we're headed somewhere. Have you heard of? And I'm like, nope, but I'm going to check it out. And then I do. I'm like,
And
I
then
used
3
to
hours
love
later,
that.
Jason's done with his psychotic rambling about how the Smithsonian's covering up ancient Egyptian artifacts. And
Hey, you
yeah,
know what though? I did watch something this week where this gal was talking about all of this stuff that has gone missing from the Smithsonian. It's pretty crazy how this came up tonight too. Um, and just like it's all cataloged and it's all in the catalog, but when they go to find looking like so much stuff is missing. I'm just like, wow, pretty crazy.
Yeah,
That,
my
you know,
question is always, and I just question. They said, well, there was no giant bones brought here. Okay, well then, what was dug up? What was cataloged? What was brought
Yep.
there?
right.
Something was,
You know,
just
we didn't even get
what
into
happened
like
to it.
the Catholic, whatever they're hiding
No.
in the
Yeah, I
basement.
tell
of the
you,
Vatican.
people talk about what they would do during a zombie apocalypse. I tell you, I would raid the
Oh,
Smithsonian archives, and then I would find a way to get to the Vatican. And yeah,
Call me. I'll meet
Yeah.
you down there.
right. Let's do it.
Awesome. Oh, that's a good way to end. Hijacking a helicopter to head to the Vatican.
Yep, let's do
No,
it.
that's
Brian, thanks for coming on. We will I'll reach out again. We'll get you on again the next few months and cover
Absolutely.
something. So,
Yeah, definitely. I look forward to it, guys. It was a great time.
hey, we're going to toss you into the green room, wrap up the show, and we'll chat with you a little bit.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Oh, again, it's like a broken record with me.
Yep.
Every week we have the best guests.
Yep. Learn
So,
so much. Get these people that, like I've said, are just, so passionate. I learn something new every week. And
yeah,
it just, sometimes you hit these little ruts where you're like, all right, you're investigating, you're doing this, right? And it kind of can feel like Groundhog Day in a way. And then you get, we get these people on every week that talk about something new. And I think that's the key to keep enjoying what we're doing, is learning something new, always questioning. And just keep it fresh. So yeah, this has been wonderful.
If it goes to paranormal or alien, I am definitely learning something, or not paranormal, Bigfoot, any of those cryptids, then I am learning something because that's never been in my wheelhouse. But it's
we're bringing you over.
Since October, I have learned a lot about a lot of them. I see your little tooth back there. So
yep.
We
My
need to
Fresno
find
Nightcrawler. Yep.
To bring on and chat about them for sure.
That would be wonderful. Yep. That, and if anyone listening, if you know anybody that has attended classes at the Monroe Institute, I would absolutely love to talk to you. So if you know anybody, send them our way. Love to hear about that.
Yep. We thank everyone for the comments over there. We're going to probably have a question that goes up every week. And then y'all can chat a little bit about that, as well as ask any of our guest questions as we go along.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone. And we'll see y'all next week.
Have a good night.
Unraveling the Darkness would like to thank Horn Paranormal Research and Twinkle Twinkle Little Store for sponsoring our show. If you're craving more paranormal content, don't forget to check out our YouTube and Facebook channels at Way Out West Paranormal and Unraveling the Darkness. You can catch all of our episodes of Unraveling the Darkness on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe as it helps others find the show and join in on the paranormal fun. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, keep your lights on, stay safe, and remember, the truth is out there, and it might just be closer than you think.